Should the New York Jets let a subpar 40 time have a top prospect drop off the board at 7? And who else should the Jets be looking at as the draft is fast approaching? I'm Glenn Naughton with JetNation Radio and JetNation.com. Be sure to log in to JetNation.com where you can register and become a part of what is the most active Jets message board on the web. It's been a while. Apologies. Dylan and I have been trying to sort out a time. Things getting in the way. A few things came up on nights I was going to do shows, so I had to keep canceling. Dylan and I were trying to do it. He might join in later. He's at work, but we were like, hey, we got to get one out. We got to talk about some of the stuff that's going on. So I'm hopping on solo. If Dylan can join later, the more the merrier. We will see how that goes. Glad to be back. So let's talk a little bit about the New York Jets draft. Well, actually, yeah, we'll start with the draft stuff because my favorite player in the draft, you've heard me say it a million times, on offense, Tetarioa McMillan, didn't run a 40 at the combine, and there were people say, "Oh, he's going to run in the 4.6s. He doesn't want to run because he's going to be a 4.8, 4.7. He's going to be slow. He can't run. No, not the case. Not the case. He was clocked between 4.48 and 4.58, I believe, was the range from a few different scouts that we saw tweeted out. The official time ended up being 4.55, which to me, I thought low mid 4.5s is what I said. Even when it was the 4.48, I said that's surprising to me. I thought a little slower. So that's where he landed. And that's obviously not blazing speed. Separation, obviously not something he does as well as some of these smaller, quicker guys. However, I feel the advantage you get with him in size, in hands, in length, he can win a lot of different ways. And it doesn't have to, and even his route running, which isn't as good as again, some of these smaller, quicker guys who can just get in and out of their breaks so much better than a guy who's 6'4". So that to me, that wouldn't scare me off. I know there are some people freaking, and this is what's funny. And we see this every year. Every year we hear fans talk about the combine. Oh, combine's coming. And people, they act angry. Oh, everyone's always talking about 40s. Stop with the 40s are meaningless. How often does a player run 40 yards untouched? It's such an overrated thing. The 40 is not the be all end all. And then what happens? A guy runs a 40 and they're like, I thought he was going to be 0.03 of a second faster. You can't draft that guy. Did you see his 40? Did you see that 40 time? Yeah, I saw the thing that everyone told me isn't that important. I saw it and it wasn't great. But now you don't want to draft him because he wasn't very good as at the thing that you told me not to worry about. People are crazy. People are nuts. But this is what we do. And it happens every year, whether it's a corner or running, where these positions where speed is a premium, speed is you've got to have it. You'll hear, don't worry about it, and then it's don't pick them. So McMillan runs a 4.55 officially. Again, Mike Evans was the last guy to run in that range and get drafted early in the first round. I believe that was Daniel Jeremiah tweeted that out the other day, and that's one of the comps I had for Ted McMillan. I don't think he's as big, or I should say as thick, but look, he can fill out, he can get in an NFL program and get a little bit bigger and be more of a factor, let that be part of his game. But as far as the things he brings to the table, I'm now seeing him mocked at 20. Like again, so he was 5 a couple days ago. He runs a 4.55, and now he's 20. And look, he could go there. I mean, I'm not under any illusions here. Guys fall every year. Guys go later than you expect. These things happen. But the Jets, basically, they need to add a weapon. I mean, they need to add a couple. You lost Conklin. I got into it with some people the other day on Twitter who, and all I said was, hey, look, Conklin's still out there. The Jets still don't have a proven tight end on the roster. Make this happen. Bring him back. You don't have a single proven tight end on your roster. And people were like, oh, he's overrated. He's this, he's that. Well, you know what else he is? He's a proven NFL tight end. Not everyone's going to be great. Talk about this all the time. People kind of have this thing where they view players as all pro and everyone else is garbage. Oh, he's a jag. He's just a guy. He's okay. Look at the past Every Super Bowl team. They don't have some guys on the roster who were just guys. Everybody's got to be a superstar. That's ridiculous. So Conklin, you let him walk out the door. You brought in Smart at tight end from San Diego. Look, there's definitely some upside there. Don't get me wrong, but I think that I think Conklin would have been a nice guy to bring back. I'm hoping what this means is that the Jets will be taking 2 tight ends in this draft, or they have a lot more faith in Jeremy Ruckert than his performance has justified up to this point. And look, I'm the first one to say the Jets are poor at developing talent, but I mean, Ruckert's been invisible. I'm not saying I would listen. If this team wants a fullback, I keep him on the roster as a fullback, and let him run some tight end. Don't get me wrong, but at this point, I'm not looking at him as a 1 or a 2, and he won't be, obviously. Even if he works at tight end, he'll probably be a 3. But again, everyone talks about Garrett Wilson and Justin Fields, rightfully so. But of course, Ruckert has that history with Fields as well, having played at Ohio State. How about we trade for one of these Ohio State receivers? I hear people say, "Oh, Chris Olave." I'm like, Jackson Smith and Jigba. What would it take to get him in here? You get JSN, you pair him, and you're in a really good spot. With having a couple of young receivers, because these guys are still all young, and they all have the chemistry is already built in. The Justin Fields thing, I actually haven't because it's been a while. We haven't talked about Fields since I went back and I watched every single one of his starts in full. I meant to put it in the description. I didn't. Just go to YouTube, type in Justin Fields every throw, every start. And there's a video up there, every single throw he made from last year. So what did you glean from that? What did I glean from that? As a fan, I'm watching and I'm listen, I'm seeing some good things. There are people jumping on the Justin Fields signing saying it was a bad idea. Listen, it wasn't. You don't have to like the guy as a player. If you don't like him personally, I hope you know him and there's a reason. Like this not liking anyway, we're not going to get into that. If you don't like Justin Fields the quarterback, that's fine. But as I said, when free agency started, who's the better option than Justin Fields? Who has more? Yes, there are a couple of veterans out there who are more accomplished, but you're not winning the Super Bowl this year with any of them. So if you have to go get a quarterback, go get a guy with some upside who might develop and become something. And of all the guys that were available, Justin Fields made the most sense from a potential standpoint, from a tool standpoint. You can't deny Justin Fields has elite physical skills. On film, are there consistency issues with the deep ball? Yeah. Are there consistency issues with the mid-range stuff? A little bit. Probably even more so. I think the deep ball was better. I think he threw a better deep ball than he did intermediate. But and listen, I don't know if this was the Steelers' lack of faith in their offensive line or lack of faith in Justin Fields. But they had him throwing a ton of quick screens, like get it out, get it out, get it out. Now, this is a guy, even if your offensive line is weak, he can run around and get away from pressure. So that was one thing that made me worry. Like they don't seem to have as much faith in him throwing the ball down the field as you would like to see. And this is Mike Tomlin, right? We talk during free agency about you get these fans who say, oh, they look at a guy being let go and they automatically assume, well, that guy sucked because that team let him go. Why did you sign him? Look, sometimes things just don't work out, right? And Fields is a guy, Pittsburgh did want him back, but I would imagine the speculation is he felt slighted by what the Steelers did to him last year by benching him when he was 4-2. But if you go back and watch those games, he had some games where he didn't play that well. And I wondered, and again, I'm not going to pretend to know this, but in seeing how often, like one of the biggest issues with Fields was how long he held onto the ball. And I can't help but wonder, is he not seeing open guys? Is he not executing the offense the way they want him to? So even if you're winning football games from a coaching perspective, if you feel like points are being left on the field or plays are not being made because a quarterback isn't making reads, that's when you say, you know what? I got a veteran here in Russell Wilson who's going to make the reads. Let's bring him in. So you bring Russell Wilson in. He goes 6-1, 5-1, 6-1, whatever it was. And then they had a run. The Steelers had a run where they played 3 teams in a row who were just way better than them. And it didn't matter if it was Justin Fields or Russell Wilson. It was like Kansas City, Philly, and the third team is escaping me at the moment, but they basically had a little gauntlet of 3 really good teams in a row who they weren't beating anyway. So I'm not putting that one on Wilson. Sometimes the other team is just better. But the bottom line, the important thing with Fields is that we saw his game evolve. We saw it develop. He was better. I think we did see a couple of, tight window throws, which is, if you've been listening to this show for any length of time, that was the ongoing debate for the entire draft process, the year of Zach and Fields. And Dylan liked Fields more than he liked Zach, and I liked Zach more than I liked Fields. And my reasoning was Ohio State is so talented with Garrett, with Olave, with JSN. Ibuka was there, who's going to be a first rounder this year. These guys were just running around wide open. Or Ibuka, can't remember if he was active much at that point. I think he was. I think he was getting some, even if he wasn't. Bottom line is, when you're at OSU and that's your receiving core, you just have guys running wide open all day. No tight window throws. Me, if I don't see some of that, it worries me. But you did see some of it with Pittsburgh, so that's a plus. That's improvement, evolving, growing, whatever, however you want to put it. And there are people who say he has gotten better as a quarterback. And I mean, prior to watching all of his starts myself, listening to what people were saying, and there was a feeling that Justin Fields was improving. You can't deny his talent with his legs. I mean, for me personally, I never want that to be the quarterback's number one attribute, because at the end of the day, you got to be able to throw the football. But you want a guy who can do what Justin Fields can do on the ground. So I think there is, and listen, anyone who's paying attention to me on Twitter the past however many months, I'm the last guy to blow smoke and paint a pretty picture. I think this team is bad. I think they're going to be bad. I just want to be fair to Justin Fields, and say that I don't think it's the bad move or the terrible move that a lot of people are making it out to be. I think the Jets overpaid. I mean, look, market's market, right? You paid whatever you paid was market. But it really feels like if Fields was that upset with Pittsburgh and the way they treated him, then why in the world would he strongly consider going back there? And with that being the case, why did the Jets pay him as much as they did? $30 million guaranteed over 2 years, up to $40 million. So you're looking at somewhere between $15 and $20 million a year. This is a guy who, and look, I get they're guesstimating, but the people at Spot Rack, they do the market value stuff. I believe they had his market value at $6 million. I had listened to Rich Cimini's podcast a day or two before the signing, and he said, if they bring Fields in, and this is a weird range because it's a big range, but I'm having a hard time remembering off the top of my head. I think he said 8. He either said 8 or 12 million a year. He thought the Jets would get him for, and they end up getting him with 15 being the floor and possibly 20 million. You're paying 15 million a year for a guy who has done very little in this league, and you had the only competition you had was a team that just slighted him, and he reportedly wasn't all that thrilled to go back to. And listen, I'm not knocking Darren Mugi for the signing, or Darren Mugi, and any of the offseason moves. I think, and look, I get it. We want to be optimistic. Well, some people want to be optimistic and paint a pretty picture for everything. This free agency period has basically been signing a bunch of guys that not a lot of teams wanted. Back of the roster, bottom of the depth chart, however you want to put it, most of these guys, not all. But I don't think Muji had a ton of choices. I think with the Fields situation, the only thing that got me with Fields was I felt like it was an overpay. And I had to laugh when, the Jets tweeted out this picture of him, like, all, like, stoic, like, oh, boss move. You just signed Justin Fields at 15, 20 million. And I'm like, I'm not so sure that's a boss move. 10, 12 million. Yeah, let's say 10 million for a guy with a very, very big question mark looming over him, many question marks. So yes, again, undoubtedly talent. Feel like they overpaid, but that's that's water under the bridge. There's nothing you can do about that at this point. Some of the other free agent additions, I've had a chance now to watch some of these guys, and there were a lot. But again, special teamers, backups, a lot. Some of these guys may not even make the roster. Um, we'll just go. I'm just pulled up a list here. The Athletic had. Let's see, Chris Boyd. Look, Chris Boyd's a special teamer, and none of us knew who he was until he hit or pushed his coach during the playoffs last year. And looked, the organization like, no, he didn't. He didn't push him, dude. Like both palms in the dude's chest, shoved him away. He pushed the guy. Things get heated and emotional, but it's not very often you see a player put their hands on a coach. Andre Cisco, this was my favorite free agent signing, to be honest. Cisco's a guy, went to Syracuse, drafted by the Jaguars. He was a ball hawk in college, had a few picks with Jacksonville. But when you get a guy coming from a system like that, a team like that, where everything seems to be falling apart, you really just don't know, is it the player or is it the team? Is it the system? From what I watched of him, he still looked like a solid player, good coverage skills, good job of keeping his eye on the quarterback and reacting. Again, didn't have a ton of picks. He had 3 a couple of years ago, but I feel like the Jets have a guy that with good coaching they can finally have a safety who might make some plays on the back end. And again, most of these are 1-year deals. Cisco was 1 year. Byron Coward, Jamin Davis, the linebacker who was with the Jets at the end of the year last year. Nothing spectacular on film from them. Davis, though, he's sort of a X factor, I should say. I was trying to think of the word. Here's a guy who was a first round pick, had a ton of tackles his first couple years in the league with Washington, ends up getting hurt, misses some time, but he's that guy who fits that Aaron Glenn prototype, that 230 plus linebacker. And the Jets, I don't know if we should get into, maybe next week we'll talk about potential trade targets, like not targets, but guys the Jets could potentially trade to make not just cap room, but to bring in guys who fit their system and get rid of guys who don't. Justin Fields, we talked about. Tyler Johnson, I love Tyler Johnson coming out of college. He was a Minnesota guy. Did a lot of things. One of those jack of all trades. Did a lot of things well. Wasn't elite in any one area, but he could, little bit of wiggle, good hands. Not super explosive, but enough to get open. So I thought he'd be a solid pro. He had a good couple of first years in the league. Not superstar stuff, but put up 400 or 500 yards as a, first, second year guy. And then from there fell off the map. Hasn't done much of anything. Would love to see them get it, develop him. Josh Myers, the offensive lineman, the center, he started with Green Bay till he was injured last year. Derek Nottie, another defensive tackle. They brought in 3 DTs. Nottie, starter for the Chiefs Super Bowl teams. Moved relegated to backup duty last year. Watched him on film. Solid against the run. You're not going to get much push against the pass. Okay player. Not great. Not gonna, not someone you're gonna write home about. Keenan Wangu is the running back, the return man, explosive running back that was with the Jets last year. Chukwuma Okorafor. Here's another big one. So here's a guy who was a multiple year starter, 4-year starter with the Steelers, right? And these things matter. Like when you're starting for organizations that have competent coaching, winning tradition, winning history, and you're good enough, sometimes you get a guy, maybe he was you plugged him in because someone got hurt and he started for a year. But when you're a 4-year starter, like that tells me something, right? But it was a weird situation. He goes to New England last year, gets benched after a couple of series where he looked terrible and went home. So that makes me wonder, was there something not related to football going on? I'm not pretending to know. That's a weird thing. When you have 4 years of solid performance with a really squared away organization, and then you go somewhere else and you last a game and you're like, I'm out. I'll be back next year for somebody else. It just makes me wonder, was there something going on off the field unrelated to football where he couldn't completely commit himself and now he's back? We'll see. We'll find out. Isaiah Oliver's back, the DB, the versatile DB. He can play some safety, play some corner, play some slot. Jamie and Sherwood re-signed. Brandon Stevens. This is the red flag to me. Well, we'll cover real quick. Jay Tufeli hardly got on the field for one of the worst defenses in the league in Cincinnati, so not a lot to watch on him, and you just kind of wonder what he's going to bring. And Rashad Weaver, linebacker, primarily special teams guy. Brandon Stevens, he got beat a lot. He got picked on pretty regularly in Baltimore. I'm sure you will have seen it by now. Gave up 1,000,000 yards receiving. Gave up nearly 2,000 yards receiving over the last 2 years. I think 800 and some this year and 700 some the year before. So you're talking 1,700. So not on the cusp of 2,000, but not all that far away. And for that, doesn't pick the ball off. He had some PBUs. Honestly, I look at his numbers and I look at Brandon Eccles just from a pure performance standpoint. I mean, I don't know why you let Eccles go. That didn't make sense to me. He's a guy rarely, when you have guys who have a hard time getting playing time, but then every time they do, they make plays, keep those guys around and find out what they're made of. I feel, and Eccles again goes to Pittsburgh. It's there's a lot of Steelers talk here, but Eccles, look, you wish him luck. A lot of guys have gone, and I think Eccles is one that they may look back and think, damn, maybe we should have hung on to that dude. Doesn't say a lot for Jarek Bernard Converse, Stiggers. Who else? There's another corner. Well, Eccles. Yeah, I think I have a third one in my head because I thought they'd bring Eccles back and they didn't. So, but bringing in Stevens tells us they don't have a ton of confidence in those guys with what they've seen. And obviously, $12 million a year, he's your starter. You're not paying a guy $12 million a year to sit, and that's what he got: 3 years, $36 million, 23 guaranteed. So basically, $8 million a year, just under $8 million a year guaranteed, but up to $12 million a year. I'm sure it'll be playing time and performance escalators and things of that nature. So the free agent class, like I said, I've seen people complain about it. Why is Moogie doing this? Why isn't he spending? Blah 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 blah. We talked about this before free agency kicked off, and people are. It's almost like they don't realize what they're saying because you get on the one hand, it's why aren't we signing big ticket guys? I mean, first of all, there's not a ton of them out there, but even if there had been, the other thing people are saying is you got to get Sauce and Garrett signed now before the price explodes. Right. Well, if you're going to sign Sauce and Garrett, if you're starting free agency with $50 million and Sauce and Garrett are looking at huge pay raises, you don't have that much to spend. And it's not just Sauce and Garrett. Teams will, sometimes they plan, they're not always just planning for this offseason. If you're the Jets, you might be thinking, if Will McDonald has himself a 10, 12 sack season, he's going to want a deal next year. He'll be in the Garrett Sauce position next year. So 12 months from now, you could be trying to sign an edge rusher, premium position, to an extension. Breece Hall, I think he goes. I think Breece leaves just because he's a back and they're going to have too many guys to pay. But if he goes off and has a monster year, do you consider keeping him? I think running back's going to be an interesting one for this team because if you're going to let Breece walk, if you're kind of projecting him as not being around next year, does Isaiah Davis, Braylon, do these guys fit what you want? I would think Braylon would, because I think we're going to see something similar to what we saw in Detroit with, hey, let's have a speed guy and a power guy. Breece is your speed guy and Braylon's your power guy. Isaiah Davis, he's your versatile guy who can do a little bit of everything, but I don't know if having him prevents them from taking a running back later in the draft, an explosive, a speed guy. I don't think you'll see them take somebody early. There was a mock that had him taking Janty. I'd be really surprised if they went that route. Fix the O-line or get a pass catcher. You can get another running. This is a really good running back class. In terms of, at the top, you got Janty, you got Hampton. To me, those are the clear-cut 1-2. But after that, your mid-late rounders, your RJ Harvey is a guy who I really like. You got DJ Giddens out of K-State. There's some good backs, guys who can catch the football, guys who can block. But again, it's going to come down to how they feel about Allen and Davis, because obviously Breece is going to be here. Breece is going to start. But if he has a monster year and Will McDonald has a monster year and they want to retain them, it gets a little dicey if you're handing out big contracts this offseason, not just Sauce and Garrett, but if the Jets had been more aggressive with some of the bigger name guys. They weren't. Could be looking at some comp picks now next year, which would be nice. Over the cap actually had them projected. I didn't see what they were, but Conklin, the Conklin signing, because look, I don't know the formula for comp picks. I just know original draft slot. Excuse me here. Original draft slot is part of the consideration. Performance is part of the consideration. Value of the contract signed is part of the equation. So all these things come together. It is possible that Conklin could net them a comp pick next year as well. So that'd be nice. The Jets, for a change, have 2 or 3 comp picks. And really, is it by design or is it just a little bit of serendipity? Because the GM doesn't have the resource, doesn't have the money to sign big ticket guys, so he's got to sit back, sign bottom of the roster guys who don't count against the cap formula or the comp pick formula, and therefore allowing you to net a few comp picks. So that's what Jets fans obviously are hoping for right now. I mean, the free agency, it has done what it does. It's died down. You're now seeing, you might see a name or two every couple of days with whatever teams. Does that mean the Jets are done? I would imagine they're mostly done, but there could be some guys still out there who they're waiting on. And as is the case with most, wait till after the draft. You know, there might be guys you like and you say, well, let's wait till the draft wraps up and then see where we're at. And that's where the Jets are. They're going to head in. They're going to have the 7th overall pick, as you know. Tetarioa McMillan, to me, if you like him, take him there. But that is some bias on my part. I do think the pick will be an offensive lineman. I think it'll be Membu or it'll be Tyler Warren, the tight end out of Penn State. I wouldn't be mad at either one. Membu, I talked about this the other day on I've talked about it on a couple different shows that we've done. But I said a couple of months ago, after watching Membu, I went to the there's a draft forum on the the forums at JetNation. As I said, get on there. If you're not on there, get on there. You're missing out. But on the draft forums, I'd said, look, this kid Membu, I just watched him for the first time. I hadn't heard anyone talk about him. There was no hype. It was late in the season. It may have been right after the bowl games, whenever it was. And I said, this kid, like, maybe you get him at the top of round 2. He looks like a really good player. And then I watched a couple more of his games, and I went back in. I was like, you know what? I think this guy's a round 1 player. You're not getting him at the top of round 2. And then he goes to the combine and shows out, blows everybody out of the water. And it's like, now you're in the top 10 conversation. So in a matter of weeks for me, so people, I've had people say that to me. You didn't know who he was before the combine. Nobody was talking about this guy. JetNation forums, folks, get in there. Get in the draft forums. And some knowledgeable folks in there too. Somebody said to me when I posted originally and said top of 2nd round, somebody else was like, no, 1st round pick. And I was like, oh, well, okay. I'll watch a little more and see for myself. Watched a few more games, and I was like, yeah, I get it. I see it. Ryan Wilson also. I'm kind of hoping Membu goes top 12 no matter what, because Rick Spielman gave his co-host Ryan Wilson a hard time a couple months back for suggesting Membu would be top 12. Spielman basically shut him down, told him be quiet. He's too short. To be fair, Membu did measure taller than he was listed, so Spielman maybe would have changed his tune if he'd known he was a little bit taller. But you've got Membu, you've got Warren, you've got Ted McMillan. Those are the big names. The one curveball, the one thing I wonder about is a guy like Shamar Stewart, who some people have as a top 10, top 12 pick. Texas A&M alum, defensive side of the ball, big D end, like Aaron Glenn likes. You look at what Aaron Glenn had in Detroit last year, a lot of big dudes. And that's the thing. So I said this, I tweeted this out a couple weeks ago, or a week ago, whatever it was. And somebody was like, there's no way. And look, I'm not predicting this, okay? I'm just looking at, and people might say, Glenn, you said the same thing about the linebackers. I did. And I was wrong. I said I thought Jamie Sherwood would go. I didn't want Jamie Sherwood to go. I just said, looking at what Aaron Glenn had in Detroit, how they built that defense, his linebackers were big. And you already have Quincy Williams. I don't see you going with two with 2 linebackers that are 220. He's going to want a guy who's 235, 240. And now he's got a couple of guys that are in the 220s. So I was wrong, unless we'll cover that in a second. So same thing with Will McDonald. Will McDonald, 230, whatever he is, 240. All of Aaron Glenn's DNs last year, not all, almost all, like 270 plus. Big DNs. Will McDonald, now look, as I can't stress this enough because people get silly when you say things like this. This isn't a hot take. It's not a bold prediction. It's an observation. I'm looking at this Jets roster and thinking, is there any chance that Darren Muji, or Aaron Glenn says to Darren Muji, Will McDonald's a really good player that doesn't fit my system? Can we move him for a pick and take Shamar Stewart at the top of round 1 and let him take that spot? The bigger bodied guy, more stout, strong against the run, all that type of stuff. And move on from Will and add picks because we want picks. Quincy Williams. Same. I mean, if Quincy Williams wants a new contract, which is something I forgot to bring up when I was talking about, planning for next offseason with the deals you do this season, Quincy Williams tweeted out right when the season ended that he wanted a new deal. So maybe Aaron Glenn doesn't keep 2 linebackers who are 220. Maybe the Jets are looking at this and saying, we have 2 guys who don't fit our system in Will McDonald and Quincy Williams, so maybe we can move them for picks. And I'm not saying I want it to happen. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I don't like when I make a very sort of what to me is a very basic observation. Oh, here's a guy who doesn't fit what they do. Maybe they'll move him. And people are like, oh, clickbait, blah, 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 hot takes. No, I'm looking at the roster that you have now, comparing it to the roster Aaron Glenn had in Detroit. And I'm looking at what Bill Parcells did. Aaron Glenn's mentor. When Bill Parcells arrived in New York, he had the defensive rookie of the year, Hugh Douglas, his best pass rusher. Gave him away. Traded him. Sent him to Philly, had a great career. Got nothing with the picks they got for him. Because some people said to me on Twitter, there's no way they traded Will McDonald. That's his best pass rusher. Yeah. If Twitter existed back then, and somebody had said, I bet Bill Parcells is going to trade Hugh Douglas, that's probably what I would have said. There's no way he's going to trade Hugh Douglas. That's his best pass rusher. And Hugh Douglas was 2 years in the league. Not like he was an old guy. And they were moving on. 2 years. Maybe it was 3. I'm fairly sure it was 2. But I could be wrong. But Aaron Glenn, again, from the Bill Parcells tree, he's seen Parcells move on from very young, very talented players in order to improve his roster. And might they consider doing the same thing? Because if you look at the history, you know whether it's Muji's mentor in Peyton in Denver, and then Peyton's mentor was Rick Spielman, who's in the room now. Spielman's thing was always, I want 10 picks. I'm on draft day, I want 10 picks. If I got to trade down, trade out, whatever, let's get 10. Peyton, same way in Denver until Sean Payton showed up and was like, no. Well, I'm not going to say I know what Peyton did in terms of numbers of picks, but you better believe Peyton was involved in their draft process far more than the idiot coach that preceded him. So I don't know that George Payton was as heavy-handed with we must have this when he had Sean Payton in the room saying, no, I want this. So backed off a little. But if you look at Payton's history pre-Sean Payton, and if you look at Spielman's history, they always want 9, 10, 11 picks. Jets have 7 right now. And they have a guy, now the X factor with whatever you want to call it. With the thing with Quincy, even if you wanted to move him, you don't want to piss Quinnen off. Although I don't think Aaron Glenn would hesitate for that reason. But I think they're both very good players. I think you'd like to have them both here. And look, maybe it's going to be a different system. Aaron Glenn, Steve Wilks, they've been around for a while. Maybe I'm looking at all this and thinking, oh, this guy doesn't fit this guy doesn't. No, they don't fit what Detroit does. Maybe Aaron Glenn's going to do something a little different, and which would be kind of nice if he looked at his personnel and said, let's structure this based on the strengths of our personnel. And let's not have big plotting linemen. Let's get some lighter, quicker guys. We've already got one in Will. We've got smaller linebackers. But we'll see, because teams are going to power run more. And I think teams are not going to want to stay small for much longer. So we'll see what happens, but I think it's worth watching. I think it's worth looking at the fact that the Jets are very likely to want to add draft picks and to look at their roster and say, we got a couple of guys who we really like in Quincy Williams and Will McDonald, but they don't fit what we do, and we can get assets for them. So again, don't get all up in arms and say, Glenn wants them to trade these guys. No, I don't want them to trade these guys. I'm just observing and saying, I think these are guys who could bring them some premium picks. Well, especially Will McDonald, Quincy, maybe not premium picks, but some picks to get them, some more assets. And maybe we see some movement. Maybe we see some shuffling, some starting players sent out in exchange for draft picks. Who knows? Who knows? Next week, we will be back. Might even do a few shows during the week. We actually will definitely do some shows during the week because the draft's almost here, folks. This is what is it? I don't even know what day it is. I think it's Friday. We don't normally do Friday shows, but we'll probably we'll just drop shows in the coming weeks to cover some more prospects. Wanted to talk about the three big names today because look, it's McMillan, it's Membu, and it's Warren. Those are the three names everybody's talking about. Through Shamar Stewart in there because again, I think if the Jets choose to move on and try to get some picks for Will McDonald, then maybe Stewart enters the equation. But a lot of different things the Jets can do. Some years the draft is a little bit clearer than others. This year, not so much for the Jets because they have enough needs and enough guys that can fill those needs that they can stay put. They can move back. If you can get a Emeka Egbuka later in the first round or, middle first round, or somebody like a Luther Burden, who I think is going to be a steal no matter where he goes because the lack of production at Mizzou isn't indicative of the talent. I think he's got top 10 talent. He just didn't have the year that he hoped. So someone's going to get him middle, late first round, and he's going to be a steal. More on that later. More on all of the prospects that we can possibly imagine the Jets taking. That'll wrap this one up. Hopefully me and Dylan next time you see me, and we will have plenty of more coming throughout this week, next week, and what are we, 5 weeks away from the draft, folks. 5 weeks away till we get to see Darren Muji at work, find out what his approach is, how they try to rebuild this thing. Or, sorry, it's not a rebuild. They're going to win now. Or so they say. Have a good one, Jets fans.